So under our initial example, we have had one company-wide allocation rate. Here we try to use some cost and effect relationships, saying, okay, there are activities and they relate to products, so the cost from the activities should be allocated to the products. And there are different activities and different products consume different kinds of activities. And we will show that based on this example of the lens manufacturers. And the lens manufacturer, at the first place, they have found out that there are 7 activities which determine indirect cost. First, the design of the products and the design of the manufacturing process. Second, the setup of the machines. A setup is required when you change the batches. A batch is a number of products which are produced in a row, and then there might be a reset of the machine because you produce a different product on the same machine, so there is a setup. There are setup costs for the machines. When you produce, operating costs incur, so operating the machines means you have energy, you have depreciation, and so on. So finally, there are costs for maintaining and cleaning the molds when you do that manufacturing of the lenses. Also, setup costs incur when you prepare for shipments, because then you do the full packaging, and finally you distribute the lenses to the customers. And these are all the first 6 activities are those which have a relationship to the product. And then you have a second activity: administer and manage all processes at this company. These are a general cost pool which has less relationship to manufacturing. In German, for those of you who know that Prozesskostenrechnung, these are called nicht leistungsindizierte Kosten. They are treated differently. So these are costs where a relationship to production and to specific products is rather vague, but if you want to allocate these costs, you can. Let's do an example to show that once you use activity-based costing, you might have different results compared to the initial situation where you use this company-wide cost rate. We use as an example setup cost for producing. So we know 80,000 units normal lenses and 20,000 units of complex lenses, and they are produced in batches. So the number of lenses, of units for the normal lenses is 250 lenses are produced in a row. That is the batch size. While complex lenses, it's only 50. So we have quite a few number of batches for that period. So 320 batches for the normal lenses and 400 batches for the complex lenses. Of course, the number of batches times the number of units per batch result in the total quantity of the total units of this lens, normal lenses and complex lenses. And now the setup time is different, because complex lenses require more specific settings than normal lenses. The setup time per batch is 5 hours for the complex lenses, while it's only 2 hours for the normal lenses. So you see, we need to spend more activities, or rather more time for the complex lenses than for the normal lenses. And now, if you have setup cost, which is our example, we assume that allocating the cost based on the setup time, it is much more appropriate, it's much more precise than if you allocate the cost based on total direct labor hours. There should be a cause and effect relationship between setup time and setup cost, while the cause and effect relationship between direct labor hours and setup cost is not really a given. Total setup hours, it's 2 hours for 320 batches, so 640, and it's 5 hours for 400 batches, and this is 2000. Total setup hours are much more for complex lenses than for normal lenses. And now there is one additional information that total setup costs are 409,200 out of this pool of 2.9 million, 400,000 roughly are setup costs. And now we try to allocate this 409,000 in a first step when we calculate that based on the setup hours. Again, go back, setup hours are 640 for normal lenses and 2,000 for complex lenses. Overall, it's 2,640 hours, so setup cost per setup hours are 155. And once you have determined that rate for the setup cost, you can allocate this rate to the two different products, because you know there is 2,000 hours for the complex lenses, that's what you see here, and 640 for the normal lenses. And the rate per hour, per labor hour, that is our comparison, is 409,000 over the 50,000 of labor hours. This is 8.84. Now we compare the different results. On the top you see the result if you allocate the setup cost based on direct manufacturing labor hours. So the rate is 8.184. You get 294,000 for normal lenses and 140 for the complex lenses. Below you see the cost allocation based on setup hours. And what you see here is a totally different result. Please. You are stretching or?
No, it is trying to explain something.
Okay, so this is
I
nothing.
was discussing, yeah. I didn't know where we get the 409,000.
Pardon?
Now it's clear.
The 409,000 is a given. It's the piece of setup cost. So we know 409,000, but the question is how we allocate that 409,000 to the two products. And here you have two alternatives. On the top you see the traditional method based on direct labor cost, which is not a good cause and effect relationship. And below you see that like it is done under activity-based costing. It's based on setup hours.
No.
And you see totally different results. You see that complex lenses need to bear a much higher piece, much bigger piece of indirect cost than here. Normal lenses are lower. And this is one case where activity-based costing can be very useful if you have products of different complexity. Because the products of different complexity have very often different activities. Mostly complex products require more activities from indirect cost than standard products. And this is why we have chosen this example over here. And the question is, how should Oculus allocate setup cost? Yeah, the answer is the more accurate cost allocation is activity-based costing, because there might be a cause and effect relationship, which is not the case with direct labor hours. So this is an example, and now we go a little bit into detail, because the activity-based costing is a very individual exercise. When you are in a company, of course, it depends what determines indirect cost. And so this is on the one hand very individual, but there are some American academics which have done a categorization of different cost pools, and we'll go over that different over this categorization right here. First of all, we have output unit level cost, which, for example, are cost for operating a machine or so. They are very much related to the output, to the units. Second, there are batch level costs. This is what we have just discussed. Costs which do not relate to units, but to a certain batch. And this means the cost per unit in the batches depend very much on the batch size. What you saw in our example is that the normal lenses have a bigger batches, so the cost per unit are lower than for the complex lenses.